Good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining. I'm Devesh Lati from the Next Genius Foundation, and this is the fall version of the Next Genius Profile Building Fair. It's called the Profile Building Essentials. It's called Profile Building Essentials because these are some of the profile building activities that you all should consider, you all should do as you start planning for college. So welcome to the Profile Building Essentials. Before coming to talking about the session, let me just tell you a little bit about the Next Genius Foundation. The Next Genius Foundation was established in 2014 with a vision to support students for their undergraduate education. All of you who are in grade 12 right now are eligible to win some exciting scholarships from the Next Genius Scholarship Program. And I encourage you to check out our website, which is next-genius.com, to learn about these scholarships. If you are in grade 12, you can win full tuition scholarships at some of the best colleges and universities in the US and India. Yeah. So the website is next-genius.com, and there is an apply now button here, which you can use to apply for scholarships to us. With that, we are now ready to start. And for the very first session, we have Mr. Abhinav Garg sir here, a stalwart of highly experienced SAT, ACT, AP teacher. Abhinav sir has over 20 years of experience guiding and mentoring students like you. Today you are going to learn with him about SAT and ACT. So a lot of you might be thinking about what to take, whether to take SAT or ACT, what SAT and ACT really is, and all the things like that, right? So in the next 20 minutes, all your doubts related to that will be cleared. Yeah. So with that, let me welcome Abhinav sir. Sir, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and we are looking forward to learning now.
Thank you so much, Devesh. So feels great to be here as always. This is one platform, with which I have been very, very fondly attached, I think, for almost 3 years now. So it always feels great to keep coming back here and interacting with all these young and jubilant minds. Okay, well, very good evening, everyone. I will take about 20 minutes of your time, and post that, if you have any questions, please, shoot them at me. So I would be addressing a very simple question today. Whether to take the SAT or to take the ACT, which of these two is the more appropriate test for me? So I'll start this by blasting a few myths, right? And I've seen the street there is full of myths about these two tests. The first myth that you'll hear is that universities will prefer the SAT over the ACT when it comes to college applications. This is not true. The two tests are completely equivalent from a university standpoint, and the universities across the globe would be very happy to accept any one of these without any bias towards one or the other. Also, the scores that you get on any of these tests, they are interconvertible using a simple concordance table, which is jointly published by the College Board and the ACT, which you can easily access online if you go. So the first thing that you must remember is that both tests are completely equivalent. No university is going to prefer one of these two over the other. The second I hear across the street from so many students, the ACT has a science section, right? So people would tell you, if I'm doing the tech products programs, if I'm doing STEM, if I want to do engineering, I want to do comp science, I want to do math, I should prefer the ACT because the science section over there, it gives us a lot of advantage over the SAT. That is not true. That is not true at all. Again, the SAT and the ACT are equivalent tests, right? No university would ever prefer for any course, any of them over the other one. That's the second myth that you need to stay completely clear of. Okay. What else now? Let's go and take a look at what then is the exact difference between these two tests. Sorry. And why do we have two tests in the first place? We used to have only the SAT for a very long time, but then there's a body called the Competitions Commission in the US, which does not allow any product or service to exist as a monopoly if it has greater than a certain number of users. So when the SAT crossed 1 million test takers, it was ordered by the Competition Commission that an alternate test be established as a competition to the SAT, and that's how the ACT was born towards the end of the 20th century. And over the last 30 odd years that it has been around, it has gained a wee bit of popularity for itself. Okay, not keeping in the suspense anymore, let's take a look at the exact structure of these tests. The SAT in its current format, of course, this test is changing from March of 2023. So I would not address that because not much is known about the new test right now. The College Board is yet to release sample papers. Now, I would assume that even if the pattern changes, the soul of the test, which has been constant for the last 100 years, is not going to change. Even if, the mode of administration changes, the structure changes, the time changes, essentially it is going to stay the test it is, right? So essentially the SAT is a test of reasoning and logic. It would test you in two simple areas, math and English. English is further subdivided into reading and writing. Writing here doesn't mean essay writing. It means here grammar, punctuation, and some rhetorics. So basically your composition skills is what comes to the fore. So the current SAT is 16, scaled on a scale of 1600, 800 for math and 800 for English. These are not raw scores. These are not absolute scores. They are scale scores. So they represent percentiles rather than representing absolute scores. For example, if you get a 1500 out of 1600 on the SAT, it means that you are scoring a 99th percentile. What does that mean? It means that you are among the top 1% of the test takers. That's how it is. So we have three sections, four in fact. There are two sections for math, one for reading and one for writing skills. So that's how the SAT goes. The ACT also has four sections. So it has one section on reading, it has one section on English, it has one section on science, and only one section on math, right? The science section on the ACT, let me talk about that first, is not entirely science. It is not entirely science. Students tell me if I have not taken sciences in grade 11, I should not be taking the ACT because I would not be comfortable with science, which is not true. Which is not true. The science section on the ACT is not exactly science. The correct technical name for this section should be data comprehension. So in that sense, it is a test of data comprehension. Just as, reading comprehension, you read from a verbal passage and you answer questions. In case of science, you read from a data set and you answer questions. Now, these data sets are going to be based in an environment of science. So it is important that you should have studied sciences until grade 10 so that you are well versed with the basic terminologies of science. Again, if you have a missing physics, I would still say go ahead and still try the ACT out. But if you're missing science in grade 10, is a chem or a biology, then it's going to be difficult for you, right? But I repeat, you do not need to have sciences in grade 11 and 12 to be able to take the ACT. So long as you've studied these subjects until grade 10, that would be good enough. Okay. So with that slight backdrop, let's talk about a section by section comparison of the ACT and the SAT. The ACT is scored on a scale of 36. So the max you can score on the ACT is a 36. The minimum that you can score is a 1. On the SAT, the maximum you can score is 1,600. The minimum that you can score is 400. You can never score a 0 on the SAT, boys and girls. If you do nothing, you leave a blank sheet, you still get a 400 on the SAT. On the ACT, you get 1. Okay. Of the 4 sections on the ACT, a simple average is taken to arrive at your composite score. On the SAT, the scores from the English and the math section are added. So English is scored on 800, math on 800, and the 2 scores are added to arrive at your scores out of 1600. Okay, perfect. Moving on. How do I decide which test do I take? So you have to understand the 2 tests in detail. Let me talk about the two sections, the four sections on each of these sections less further. So let's start by comparing the English on the ACT and the writing on the SAT, which are pretty much parallel, sections. ACT on the English section, you're required to solve 75 questions in 45. Sounds like a lot, but then you'll not struggle with time on ACT English ever. SAT, 44 questions in 35 minutes. These two are pretty much parallel areas with very, very similar scope. Not much different between these two. Now, the SAT would be 10% harder than the ACT in terms of its difficulty level, right? So that takes care of your English versus writing. Science is only on the ACT. It is not there on the SAT. You're required to solve 40 questions in 35 minutes. These 40 questions are divided into some 6 or 7 passages, having some 5 to 7 questions each. And as I told you, it's a test of data comprehension. This is not a test of science. Okay. Now we come down to the two areas where the two tests differ most of all, math. Math on the SAT has two sections. Section 3, which is math without a calculator. So you're not permitted to use a calculator on section 3. You have to solve 20 questions within 25 minutes. And then you have a calculator section, another 38 questions in 55 minutes. And on this test, you can use the most advanced graphing calculator. I've often seen students take the SAT or the ACT with a simple calculator or a scientific calculator. Boys and girls, please do not do that. Technology is always an enabler. So if you do not know how to use a graphing calculator, get one. Get one, practice on it. There are lots of tutorials available on YouTube online, which you can use. So on the SAT, these two sections that we have, the one without the calculator or one with the calculator, mostly they'll talk about algebra. Algebra would form about 65% of the SAT. Arithmetic and statistics would form about 25%, and 10% would be some geometry and trigonometry. That's very much the scope. So it's a very well-defined test. So I normally say the SAT is a narrow and deep test, whereas the subject matter is very defined, very focused, very narrow, but the way in which they frame the questions is quite complicated. So you'll always know the concept on which a question is based, but that doesn't mean that you'll always be able to answer it. It's fairly complicated, right? So they're complicated by the way they frame the questions. The SAT, on the other hand, math is more curricular. Number one, only one math section. You can use a graphing calculator throughout. But in terms of its soul, the ACT is a wide and shallow test. It covers a huge curriculum. I mean, you'll have questions from grade 11 math, questions from grade 12 math, but you'll never find difficult questions on the ACT. Number one. Number two, these questions would always be very, very direct. Right? So if you know the concept, you'll always get the answer right. But on the ACT, you may not always know the concept because of its vast scope. I mean, how many topics are you going to cover? Also, given that most of the students, they start preparing at the end of grade 10, they have not gone through much of grade 11 and grade 12 math by that point in time. Last, reading. This is where the most visible and difference exists between the two tests. SAT reading gives you more time, is a very difficult test. It always requires you to read between the lines. Always require you to read between the lines. ACT, very direct, very simple questions. The answers to all questions are given directly on the passage itself. You just have to read the lines, but there are too many of them. To solve 40 questions on the ACT, you get 35 minutes. To solve 52 questions on the SAT, you get 65 minutes. So SAT offers you significantly higher amount of time than the ACT, but this time advantage to a great extent is offset by the fact that you're tackling tougher questions, you're tackling difficult questions. So it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. If I want to capture in one line, The SAT is a test of reasoning and logic. The ACT is a test of speed. If I want to give you an analogy, the SAT is like a one-day international cricket game. The ACT is like a T20, very fast-paced, right? You can't get it wrong for a short time and get back. On a T20 game, if you lose it for a block of 4 hours, you'll never be able to get back into the game because it's so fast-paced. It doesn't allow you to come back, which is not the case with the SAT. SAT offers you significantly higher amount of time. If we take a look at the average time per question on the ACT is 49 seconds. 49 seconds per question is what you get. On the SAT, what you get is 70 seconds per question, which is 42% higher as compared to the ACT. So, two more questions I'm going to answer before I throw it open to all of you. Number one, how do I decide? Very simple, very simple. Decide only on the basis of diagnostic tests. Do not decide on peer pressure. See, the SAT is a more popular test in India, but you're taking this test to go to the US. The ACT is a more popular test in the US currently. Why so? Because SAT has a marketing office in India. They conduct PSAT. You guys, they have an early awareness. You take the PSAT, which is a very simple test, fall in love with it, and then you're completely close to the ACT, which is not. Another difference is ACT is done off a computer screen. The SAT is paper and pencil until December. From March, even the SAT will become computer-based. So for most of you, that would really not make a hell lot of a difference. Take two diagnostic tests. Never take partial diagnostics. They don't expose you to the rigor of the test. Stamina is one of the prime things that you need to put to forth on each of these tests. So take two diagnostic tests. Always take a full 3-hour SAT diagnostic test and always take a full 3-hour ACT diagnostic test. On the basis of these two tests, you decide which is the test that you're going to take. And I'll give you a very, very simple, how to take the diagnostic tests. You can simply visit our website, fill up a small form. Somebody would get in touch with you. I'm mentioning my website here. We offer free of cost diagnostic tests to all students and a small a guidance session to all these students who want to take these tests with us. What is the right time to take the diagnostic tests? Not until December of your grade 10. Never take this test before December of your grade 10. That is the earliest. So don't take this test in grade 8, grade 9. There's going to be a pre-kill. So when you're halfway through your grade 10 or maybe end of your grade 10, early in your grade 11, that would be the perfect time to take these tests. Okay. I've taken the two diagnostic tests. How do I decide which test do I go in for? Number one, if you have a missing chemistry or a missing biology in grade 10, do not look at the ACT test. Then the choice for you has to be the SAT. Okay. I've studied all three sciences. I've taken both the diagnostics. Which one do I take? Follow these 1, 2, 3 simple steps. Also, one more filter here. If you're not planning to study math in class 11, do not go for the ACT. Stick to the SAT, which has more common sense based math. ACT has more technical math. Third, compare your total scores on the SAT and the ACT. Once you take a diagnostic test with us, we will be able to, supply you with a concordance table with the help of which you can convert these scores. Once you've converted these scores, if your ACT score is up to 2 points higher than the corresponding SAT score, still prefer the SAT. The SAT is a more tutorable test, is a test which is more amenable to learning. The start to finish increment on the SAT would nearly always be higher than what it is on the ACT. So if my ACT is up to 2 points higher than the corresponding SAT, we should still prefer the SAT and not the ACT. Okay. What if my ACT score is further higher? Suppose I'm scoring a 1200 on the SAT and I'm scoring a 28 points on the ACT. 28 corresponds to 1300 and 1200 corresponds to 25. So I would then have a 3-point advantage on the ACT as compared to the SAT. What do I do now? Look at the reading scores. One score which is very, very difficult to improve is your reading score on the ACT. ACT reading is purely speed based. It does not really improve very easily. So look at your reading score on the ACT. Your reading score on the ACT must be 3 points higher than the average of your ACT scores. For example, I'm scoring 28 on the ACT and I want to select the ACT. If your reading score is not 31, or let's say at least a 30, in spite of the lead that you have over the SAT, do not look at the ACT, because ACT reading scores do not really improve much from their baselines, right? So that's how you need to decide. The last question, when should I start preparing for the SAT or the ACT, and when should I take these tests? You should typically have a 2-attempt strategy. The first of these should be taken early in your class 11. The earliest you should start is halfway through your grade 10. The best time to start. So if, for example, you'll be completing your grade 10 in 2023, you should start earliest December this year, latest June next year. Put about 3 to 4 months, 4 months ideally, maybe 5 months towards the first attempt, and then take one more, maybe 2 to 3 months down the line with more practice, do lots of mock papers, go through a lot of reference material, analyze your mocks, learn from your mistakes. Learning from mistakes is integral to doing well on the SAT or the ACT. Take one test. Most of these tests are super scored by the universities, which means if I've taken the SAT twice, the universities will collect my individual highest from English and math and add them up to obtain a super score. You can Google it. What do I mean by super score on the SAT? You'll get some fantastic matches. Get the calculator, train yourselves on it. And most importantly, guys, please read a lot. The only difference I see between my students from India who do really well and the ones who do not do that well, the difference would lie in their reading coefficients. So kids who are well read will always do well on these tests. That's how they're designed. And you know, reading is not a skill which you can acquire in a day. So if you're in a grade 8, grade 9, grade 10 right now, make it a habit to read a storybook, a novel, a fiction, and read fiction. You know, I'm very good with fiction, no problem at all. But read diverse authors. So read as many of them as you want. Don't read multiple books from the same author. So read one book each from multiple authors, but make sure that you guys read at least an hour a day. That will really come to your rescue in terms of getting you the right kind of score on the SAT or the ACT. And in case of any further questions, queries, you can always get in touch with Next Genius. You can get in touch with us. No problem at all. You can reach us out on the website. You can request a call back and so on and so forth. I'm done, Devesh sir, with my.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing all that wonderful information in a very, very crisp format. And to all the students, just feel free to post your questions in the chat box. If you have any questions, you can just put down in the chat and we would be happy to answer that. And while you're doing that, let me just very quickly run a poll. We have a poll question for you. So please answer these questions. It will help us understand you better and also help us plan the future sessions. So the first question is now in front of you. Which city are you from? And then if you scroll down, you will see more questions like which grade are you in and which board, which curriculum are you from, right? So there are 3 questions. Please answer those questions and let us know about you. Okay, I can see most of you are answering. To all those who are not yet answering, just take a few moments to answer the poll question, please. Okay. There are 3 questions once again. So all right, that's it. Thank you so much for answering. Maybe all of you are curious to know the results or the poll. So which city are you from? A lot of you are not from any of the metros. Which grade are you in? So grade 12. So it's a mix with 1/4 of you from grade 12, grade 11, grade 10, and grade 9 also. Fantastic. And a lot of you are from IB schools or CBSE or ICSE. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Abhinav sir, I have a couple of questions which have
I
come.
have a question. Yeah, I have a question. Let me take this up for very
Yes.
interesting question from Mr. Soham Verma. Can we take these tests as many times as we want? Will university read all of my scores, or do I only give my best one results to them? Well, that's a very good question, in fact, because the answer is different for SAT and the ACT. On the SAT, all scores will automatically be forwarded. You have an option to withhold them, but then the admission officer will get to see results withheld. So she'll know that there was a score here that you're choosing not to report. But on the ACT, you choose what you wish to report and you choose what you wish not to. Also, SAT, once you've obtained the scores, you cannot cancel them. On the ACT, they can be cancelled even after you've taken a look at the score. So there's a huge technical difference.
Okay. A similar question is asked by another student. Are we only allowed to take a maximum of 3 attempts on the SAT?
No. There's no limit to the number of attempts you can take. You can take as many as you want, but more than 2 are not recommended. More than 3 are seldom. Because the admission officer thinks that this boy has been doing nothing but just taking the SAT, doing nothing else in life. That's not a very good picture to present. So ACT multiple attempts are absolutely fine. SAT multiple attempts are not very good. Here I'll take one. I've just started my grade 11. What are the milestones to touch this year for the SAT preparation? Start right now. Take one test in December and take the new digital test in March or May next year, depending upon what curriculum you are in. Can I give the SAT or ACT to apply to UK universities? Mr. Aryan Bhattakur. UK would typically not, unless it's an Oxbridge, will not require an SAT or the ACT really. Though if you have a good score, it's an added advantage on the UK applications, but it's not a mandatory requirement like it is for most US universities. Any further questions they wish to suggest?
Can we give both tests and choose which result to give?
Excellent, which is like saying, let me do my ICSC and let me do my IGCSC, and then let me see which of these I did better on, and then I'll furnish the one which is better in the process, losing 2 years, but that is okay, fine, no problem for me.
So basically, it's not recommended. Yeah.
No, you decide. Take both diagnostics and decide which is the one that you're better at.
Yes.
In grade 11, grade 12, you will never have a lot of time with you. That's the most precious resource. So we can't waste time on taking 2 of these tests.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We're almost coming towards the end of the session. But before closing, any final comments from you, sir?
Or nothing, just take the diagnostics and decide. Start in time. I mean, only time we face a problem when I see a 12th grader now today coming to me in 28th of July and saying that I want to take the test in August. I haven't done any prior prep. Give yourselves time to prepare for these tests. Somebody is asking for math division on the SAT. You can find it on the College Board website. They'll give you crisp and clear this thing. Again, which specific test to be taken? I told you, you can take any of these tests to get into any of the undergrad programs in the US. Nobody is going to discriminate between these 2. I think we are running out of time now. I'll hand it back to Devesh.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for your time on the call today. It's always a pleasure to listen to you and learn something interesting, something new. And looking forward to more such interesting sessions with you.
Completely my pleasure to be here and look forward to many more such sessions.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For the next session, I'll invite Kajol to take over. Kajol, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, we have our speaker also with us here. Mr. Dhruva Bhat is here for our next session. So good evening, everyone. I am Kajol Shah, communications expert at the Next Genius webinars. And I welcome you all for the second session of Profile Building Essentials online research programs. And as I said that we have the speaker with us here, Mr. Dhruva Bhat from Lumiere Education. He will talk about various online research programs and how they would help you in standing out in your college admission process. And before I pass it over to him, a brief introduction. He is a director of Lumiere Education. He founded Lumiere Research Scholars Program with his friend Stephen Turban from Harvard. He is a current DPhil, MPhil candidate and Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University. Welcome, Dhruva. It's always a pleasure to have you, and now pass it over to you.
Incredible. Hi, everyone. I'm just getting my slides up. If you'll give me a second. Sorry about that.
Just a quick announcement, all the recordings will be available on our YouTube channel, and I'll be posting the link of our YouTube channel below in the chat so you can have access to all the recordings after the session.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. So I'm hoping to speak for the next sort of 15 to 20 minutes and then open it up to question and answers. And over the course of this session, we're going to be talking about, first of all, what is research so that we can all get on the same page about it. Second, what are some different types of research that you could do when you're in high school? And third, why that matters for you as you think about your next steps. And then in the Q&A, happy to answer questions about any aspect of this process. But before I go into that, I want to just start off with telling you a bit more about who I am and why we do what we do. So Stephen and I run the Lumiere Research Scholar Program, which is a one-on-one research mentorship program for high school students from around the world. We've now worked with over 2,000 students, and these are students who've gone on to do incredible things from making it to the national level of the Regeneron Science Fair in the US, to winning the MIT Think Innovation Competition, being published in undergraduate journals run by Cornell and Stanford, and getting into every single one of the Ivy League universities, as well as Oxford and Cambridge. So these are incredible, incredible high school students. But growing up, that was not the sort of context that I came from. So I grew up in Chennai, went to a CBSE school, and went to a school that was academically very strong, but not particularly research-oriented and not particularly internationally oriented. And so for me, I was lucky enough to get a bit of exposure through competitive debating. And through that, I was able to dive into topics I was interested in and see what academics in other parts of the world was like. As a result of that, I ended up applying to universities abroad, and I studied economics and statistics at Harvard, and had a fantastic 4 years doing that. But even there, I was knocking on the doors of professors through my first and second years, trying to get access to research opportunities, only to be told, you're a first-year student, you're a second-year student, what value can you add to our projects? For those of you who are confused or struggling about research, I fully understand where that confusion is coming from. But luckily, I managed to get into a one-on-one research program that was happening over at the Harvard Business School the summer after my second year. And that changed the trajectory of my life. It put me on this academic path. It helped me understand what research involved. And I decided that I wanted to keep going, which is why I went on to graduate school in the UK at Oxford, as was mentioned. In contrast, my co-founder, Stephen, came from a very different background. So he grew up in the US. His dad was a professor at a business school. His great-grandfather, Fritz Kahn, whose book you see there on the screen, was such a prominent intellectual in Germany that when Fritz had to flee Germany because of the Holocaust, the person who wrote the letter that got him asylum in the United States was none other than Albert Einstein. So that's the sort of incredible background that he came from. But for him, the research program was an opportunity to gain access to mentorship, to meet professors that he could turn to when he had questions or issues, that he could ask for advice and inspiration, and that really changed the shape of his life as well. So when the two of us started reflecting on sort of where we're at right now, we realized that research really has shaped who we are, and that we would have loved to do this when we were in high school as 16 and 17-year-old little nerds. And that's why we set up the Lumiere Research Scholar Program with the goal of making research opportunities more available to high school students around the world. And so as a way of doing a round of introductions, I would love if you could put in your chat what area or areas you might be interested in doing research in. And this can be as specific as saying a very narrow type of disease, or it can be as broad as saying that you're interested in astrophysics. So are you able to message in the chat, or? Okay, great, yeah. All right, people are private messaging me, but feel free to message the whole group if you're, oh, you can't message the whole group, so it's just private messaging, great. Space science and technology, fashion styling, mass media, cancer research, commerce and economics, design, research on the brain, computer science, the role of women in a patriarchal society, economics, euthanasia and veterinary medicine, app development, design management, IT, music and art. Wow, these are some incredibly diverse set of topics that you've got across the social sciences, the sciences, and the humanities. So a good question to ask then is, what does it even mean to do research when you talk about research across such different fields? And our explanation, and this is something we've thought a lot about, is that research is the process of creating a tiny piece of new knowledge that moves human understanding ahead. And so it begins with identifying something that you find confusing or interesting in the world around you, in the human body, in outer space, and using all of that to then dig deep into a topic to see what have scientists and researchers already found about this topic? What do we already know? And once you've figured that out, you then know what it is we don't understand or don't know. And that allows you to frame a research question and then do your own analysis to try and understand what the answer to your question is. And you develop your argument. People think that that's where research ends, but for a lot of people, especially students in India, that's when the hardest part begins, which is you then need to write that up in the form of a research paper that is clear, well argued, well presented, that you can then share out into the world. So that entire process of going from something that you are curious about to identifying something that is still unexplained in that area, constructing and developing your own explanation for it, and then writing and sharing it out is what is research. And this is true whether you're doing research in machine learning or you're doing research in gender studies and cultural studies. And so this is really the core part of this presentation. So when you're thinking about doing research online, what are some of the different ways that you can do it? The first type of research that a lot of people think about is lab-based research. So this is a physical form of research. It's much harder to do online. It's very common across medicine, some of the social sciences like psychology, physics, engineering. And in lab-based research, what you do is you set up an experiment to test your hypothesis. You carry out the experiment, you get some data, you analyze the results of that data, and then through all of that, you then come up with a finding that you write up in the form of a paper. But lab-based research is actually really, really hard to do as a high school student. First of all, because often labs are not available for you to use. And second, even if labs are available, it can take years of training for you to be ready to do an experiment of your own in a lab. So what that means is that for most high school students, especially those who are as time crunched as many of you are, you've got to think about how can you do research using the resources that are available to you. In the context of lab-based research, maybe that means that you run a simulation of the experiment that you want to run. Maybe you do what's called a hypothetical experiment where you write up a paper as if you had done an experiment and as if you had gotten findings and analyze it. But you need to be very clear about why you chose the decisions that you did and why you think the findings you got were reasonable. Or you could do one of the many other types of papers that does not depend on a lab experiment. And I think this is something that sort of blows people's minds sometimes and is useful for you to think about as well. And I want to focus on three types of research that you can do online. The first is what's called quantitative research. So when I say the word quantitative, what comes to mind? What do you think quantitative research means? Okay, I have someone who says statistics. All right, that can be a starting point. What else? Any other answers related to quantities, graphs, and trends, where numbers are involved? So Sayali gets the core of it right, which is quantitative researchers analyze numerical data. So they look at data in the form of a government census or a business's sales data or the observations that a telescope makes about the position of stars or the temperature of stars. And then you use statistics and statistical sort of computer programs to look for trends within that quantitative data. So you see, are there certain variables that move up or down? Are there certain things that are related to each other? And by looking for those trends, you then develop an argument about what it is that you're studying. And then you write that up and you present your paper. So that's a quantitative research method, and it's common across many of the sciences and social sciences. So in biology, you have large stores of genetic data that are available online, which talk about different genes and what kinds of diseases they're associated with. And you can use that to study, are certain types of genes more associated with diseases than others? Or you can look at it in the context of international relations, where you can look at quantitative data on countries' GDP and levels of trade or conflict with each other, and see, are countries that are richer more likely to go into war or less likely to go into war? So all of this is quantitative methods that use numerical data to try and study your question. The nice thing is you can do this entirely from your own home. Download the data online, learn how to use a statistical program, and then analyze it. The flip side of quantitative research is qualitative research. So if quantitative research is about numerical data, what do you guys think qualitative research is about? Once again, throw it in the chat. So someone says practical applications. I'm not sure about that, because I think quantitative research can also have practical applications. I see interview data. That's a good answer. So interviews for sure. Soham says surveys. I think that's an interesting answer, because a survey can be quantitative or qualitative. The core definition of qualitative research is that it is non-numerical. So that can mean that you can use interviews where you talk to people and ask them questions. It can be based on images or videos. So if you're analyzing paintings or advertisements or posters, it can be based on analyzing documents, so policy documents or historical documents or newspapers. But all of these, the main point is that the data you're looking at is not numbers, it's words or images or sights or sounds or something like that. And so that's why a survey can either be quantitative or qualitative. So if I sent out a survey that says, how smart do you think Dhruva is? Describe how smart Dhruva is. Is that quantitative or qualitative? If the survey asks, tell us a little bit about how smart Dhruva is. That's right, qualitative. Excellent. I got the right answer overall. Whereas that same survey could be conducted in a quantitative way. So I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how smart do you think Dhruva is? And all of you gave me a 9.5 or a 10. Then that would be a quantitative survey, because you're answering the question using a numerical method. But then in a qualitative field, what you're doing is still similar, because you are then looking through the answers that people are giving, the images that you're looking at, the documents that you're looking at, and trying to identify trends there, and then make an argument about what that means for the field and your question. And this is something that is used across the humanities and the social sciences. So if you're writing a paper in literature, you'd be analyzing texts. If you're writing a paper in anthropology, you would be looking at people's behaviors. Or even in business, you could be looking at how consumer psychology works, or how businesses have made various decisions. So a case study, for example, would be a qualitative research method. Finally, you have what's called a systematic literature review. So a systematic literature review basically uses past research that has been done on the topic. So you look at academic papers, books, articles, things like that, and then synthesizes it for the reader. So that you read all of that and then say, here are the big things that people believe. Here are the various points of disagreement. And here are the results and where I stand on the issue, my own perspective. The cool thing about quantitative, qualitative, and systematic review research is that all of these can be done online from your own home. And they are all legitimate, important, respected forms of research that even professors at Harvard and Oxford are doing as well. So what I want to banish from this is the belief that you need to be physically in a lab in order to be doing meaningful and interesting research. And this can be really important because when you think about your next steps, whether that is a summer program, whether that's college, whether that is an internship, research can be a really important part of that story and that narrative because first of all, it showcases academic excellence. Anyone can say that they're interested in history. Very few people can point to a 15 to 20 page paper that you have written as part of your interest in history outside of school independently. The second is usually when you're doing research, you're doing it with a mentor. And certainly in a program like Lumiere, you'd be working with a mentor. And that means that you're then able to build a relationship with someone that you're able to ask for feedback, that you can turn to for guidance and can become someone who will really be a valuable source of advice and inspiration down the line. And finally, you're able to show off your skills. You're able to show that you are independent, that you've got critical thinking abilities, that you've got problem-solving abilities, you have experiences that you can highlight in essays and interviews, all of which are super, super valuable. So that's what we do. That's who we are. We run the Lumiere Research Scholar Program, which is a selective research program for talented students from around the world, where you work one-on-one with a researcher from a top university to produce an independent research project. If you're interested, our website is lumiere-education.com, and our upcoming deadline is in exactly a month on the 28th of August. And you will be able to then start in September. So do check us out, but I am now open for any and all questions.
Thank you so much, Dhruva, for taking us through the importance of online research and how to do it in a very crisp manner. We do have a question here. Sai is asking that, can I get into physics major by researching computer science?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two things there. The first is there are some fields that are related to other fields. So computer science, for example, especially if you're doing machine learning or data science, is hugely useful in physics because the kind of big types of data that are created through physics experiments these days tend to be studied almost entirely through machine learning methods. So being able to have a CS background means that you can do physics well. Similarly, if you have done research in psychology, then you might be able to do business well because you can understand how the customer thinks, or you might be able to do political science well because you can analyze the behavior of voters. So in general, because fields are related to each other, talking about what you're doing in one field can demonstrate that you are successful at another as well. But the second is universities, especially liberal arts universities like those in the US or Ashoka, fully understand that you haven't made up your mind when you come to university, that you are coming to university in order to grow and explore. And so being able to say, I have done research in computer science and physics, my preference right now is in physics, but I'm open to exploring both, demonstrates the sort of different things that you are excited about and your multifaceted academic ability. And for you, it also helps you make a decision, do I want to study physics or do I want to study computer science? So having some experience in both can be useful.
Great. We have another question. A student is asking, can I add my fitness and nutrition research paper, which I wrote for my personal project in my college application?
So you can, if you've written it very sort of in like 9th to 10th grade rather than in 12th grade, then you might want to go back and revise it and improve it so that it actually demonstrates the strength of your work. But the other thing you've also got to think about is you want to see, it's valuable to point to that sort of thing. But remember that anyone who's applying from a similar school or similar educational board as you will have a similar project that they will also include. So the question should always be for you, does this demonstrate my intelligence, ability, initiative taking sufficiently and explicitly?
Okay, we have one common question from many students, like when do you recommend to start the research? Like when should they start doing it?
Very, very good question. So most students who do the program do it sort of in the 10th or 11th grades, because at that point, you've both developed an understanding of what you're interested in and some strength in the field. You could do it earlier, say in the 9th grade or so, but unless you're an exceptional 9th grader, you need to recognize that then the goal of the project is a little bit different. That if you're doing it in 9th or early 10th grade, the goal of the project is really exploration, so that you can form the basis on which you can go on to do other things. You can go on to do an internship, you can go on to do more research, but the fundamental point is that the question isn't when you do it. The question is, what are your goals from that research? And are you using it as sort of the final endpoint of everything you've worked towards? Or are you using it as a starting point from which you will build on? Someone asked, can I do it during a gap year? Yeah, that's a great time to do it. I didn't mention it because, in India, most students don't take gap years, but a gap year is a really, really good time to do it because it allows you to strengthen your profile, keep yourself engaged, and also an underrated benefit is that if you take a gap year, sometimes by the time you go to college, you're like, I don't remember how to be in school anymore. So you can keep your brain and academic abilities engaged.
Okay. So Dhruva, I would just request you to put down the website and your details if anyone who, if they want to connect with you, the students here.
Of course, I'm not able to message out to the full group, so you might have to do that.
Yes, just you can send it to me. I'll edit in the resources.
Great, yeah. I can do that. Oh, no, I'm able to send it to everyone in the meeting. Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. So I also have a question that says, how much time would one typically take to complete a research project? That's kind of like asking how long is a piece of thread, because a research project, the more time you put into it, the better it will be. So it depends on what your goals from the project are. I would say the minimum amount of time is about 3 months, where you're working consistently for 8 to 10 hours a week. But if you're able to do a lot more work in a given day, or if you've got more time, that'll just mean that you do a better project by the end of it.
We also have one more question. That is grade 12 summer a good time to do a research project?
The summer after grade 12?
Yes.
Or the summer before grade 12?
I guess grade 12 summer, that is, I guess, after grade 12.
Got it. After grade 12, I think it's an excellent time to do it if you're approaching it from the perspective of getting ready for university and sort of preparing for your undergraduate degree. So it can be a really, really useful experience. And it means that, unlike me, when I went to college, I had no research experience. And so I had to be turned down by many professors. Being able to have this when you're going into college means you can say, look, this is what I spent my summer doing. I want to continue doing it. Would that help? However, the only issue is that, of course, that by that point, unless you're taking a gap year, your college application process is already done. So it won't help you from that standpoint. But in terms of knowledge, skills building, it absolutely will.
Great. Thank you so much, Dhruva. We are coming at the end of this session, and thank you so much for answering all the questions and taking us through the importance of online research programs. Any last words before we end the session?
I would just say, just to go back to that initial slide, I think research has really shaped both who Stephen and I are and what matters to us and the kind of academic experiences that we have had. And we really hope that you get the opportunity to experience that as well, either through Lumiere or otherwise. But if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dhruva. So one quick announcement before we move on to our next session is that all the recordings will be available on our YouTube channel. I am pasting the YouTube channel link in the chat box. You can subscribe and have access to the recordings. So yes, we can now start with our next session.
Kajol, shall I take over?
Yes. Now, Before I give it over to you, Neha, I'll just give a brief introduction of yours and what is this session is going to be about. It is going to be about importance of English proficiency in college applications. And we have Ms. Neha Gupta Day, Business Growth India from Duolingo today with us. She is the first team member of the Duolingo English test in India. She is a dynamic leader who has driven business across many industries and specializes in market expansion, marketing, and brand while working on the brand across globe. So welcome, Neha. We are excited to hear from you today about the importance of English proficiency and Duolingo. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Kajol, for the warm welcome. And I see that we have quite a number of people. And I'll start by sharing my screen. And while I'm doing that, I hope there is no fatigue that our audience already has, because they've been going through some of the presentations already. I will try and keep this as engaging as possible. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Super. Hi, welcome everybody. Good evening. I see it's a good weather across India. I hope. I'm based out of Hyderabad and we have nice rains which have come. With rains, I hope you all are preparing towards upcoming exams and tests, which I think most of the academic sessions have right now. What I'll be talking about today will be why is the need to have English proficiency and when should you prepare and what should you prepare for. And since I represent Duolingo English Test, which is one of the fastest growing and well accepted English language tests globally, I'll give you some insights into how you can build your portfolio and use Duolingo English Test to strengthen your representation and your application for your upcoming school, higher education, international education applications. Some of the things I'm going to cover is, why is it required? And so we have about 30 minutes. I'm going to try and close the session in 20 minutes and have about 10 minutes for us to do a question answer. I'm going to randomly pick people if you will not ask questions. So please have some questions ready for me as we go through the presentation. Okay. Why English proficiency? And I think with my few years of experience in higher education, I have realized that all of us come with dynamic experiences, understanding, and of our languages, of our topics, of what we've studied. But when we go and study in an international school, one of the most important part is that we are able to comprehend what is being taught there. And if the language of or the medium of communication there is English, the expectation is that if you're not at the same level of comprehension, you may have challenge getting into the academic groove. And not just that, it is important that you're able to engage with other people, with the local community, and obviously the academic faculty there to make the most of your higher education. So a lot of universities you will see request you to have a specific understanding because they think that the medium of delivery, the content of delivery requires you to have a specific level of English language comprehension. As I understand from Kajol, we have different grade students here, and I will highly encourage you to start exploring and understanding what level of English proficiency you are right now at, and if you have time to work towards it, because it is not just about giving that test and getting a score. It is also about how does it help you in your throughout in your academic and your professional career as well. Sometimes universities will also use this as a placement into ESL or your first year coursework, or if you're looking at, for example, immigration, then at least US doesn't consider English proficiency as a parameter for immigration. What it will ask you is so that you, the universities will look at a parameter and, for example, they will release you an I-20. Some other countries may look at that. However, I always believe that that is a secondary parameter. First, you should be able to submit a score for your admission. And once you've secured the admission, then you can work towards the other visa requirements. And if a test is required, for example, for Canada, you can work for for example, IELTS over that time. So I always prioritize getting an offer and closing an admit into a university over then applying for IELTS, IELTS or a visa, because that has a longer duration versus when your academic or application deadlines are. Now, some of the things that you will see in any university site, which is under the section of English proficiency, will be what is the minimum score, for example, they need. And they will specify which all tests do they accept and what is the minimum score for each of those tests. And how do they move across tables is something I will cover in my upcoming slides. Now, some people may also say applications who we see succeeding with us are usually a score above this. So that means they're suggesting that if you are a score above, say, a Duolingo 110 is what they're minimum expecting you. Some of them also have a test waiver policy. So they will have certain, for early applicants, they will say, okay, these are the test codes that we are putting out, and you can make use of that. Some of the tests also have subscores, and some universities may also call out that these are the subscores which are required in various sections of the test, and you have to pay an important attention to that. I know a lot of us are, everybody is an Indian here, and we are all kind of obsessed with 100 on 100, and that is a perfect score that we consider, which is not in an English proficiency test, unlike an SAT or ACT. So you should look at what is a band that you need to operate in, rather than saying that I want to go for a 160 on Duolingo, for example. And this is a quick example of how, for example, Northeastern has put out their English language test requirements. They would say that your test should not be more than 2 years old from the time that you're looking at an application deadline. They will give you bands. What is the band they're looking for each of the tests? So for example, on a Duolingo English test, they are looking at a 120 to 130 because that's the range we operate in, versus an IELTS, which is looking at 7 to 8. Now, this brings me to something we call as concordance, which is basically understanding what are the bands that are there across various tests. And if a university is asking, say, 5.5 to 7, or if you're aiming in IELTS 5.5 to 7, you should be aiming about 90 to 115 in Duolingo English test. And I'll tell you why you may want to compare this, because practicing and getting an approximate test score in Duolingo English test is free of cost. So you can use DET or Duolingo English test as a benchmark for you to have a fair bit of understanding on where does your English proficiency sit, and do you need to work more, and if you have to give another test as well. A quick background on DET, which is Duolingo English test as we call it. So our mission is to make education accessible to everybody, and we started with I'm sure many of you must be aware of the language learning app, which is Duolingo, which is our parent company. It has more than 500 million users. It is one of the most used language learning app for various languages across the globe. Right now we have more than 30 languages. And it is most downloaded English language app. So why did we bring a product like Duolingo English test? So our founder and co-founder and CEO, Luis, he was born in Guatemala, and he was an international student himself, and he realized that for him to go and study in US, he had to give an English proficiency test, which was not available in his own town. He had to spend more than $1,000 to go to another country, take the test. Now, he believes if that access is not available universally, then there are people who want to or who have the potential to go and study in various places, but they will not be able to afford, or they will not be able to manage to take the test. Now, why and what did we change? So right now, any traditional test, which is also a fantastic test, it's just that sometimes it is not as accessible for various reasons. So students decide they want to take a test, they look at booking a date. Most of the times it's 2 months away. Now you realize your deadline is a month later, and you have to go to a test center, which could also be another city. And it's a 3-hour test, which becomes sometimes quite intimidating and stressful. Now, versus that, we said that for Duolingo, if you have to take a test, you can take anytime, any day, anywhere, because it's an online test. is just 1 hour, because it's an adaptive test. So we don't need to give you 100 questions to understand your level of proficiency. With every test that you take, we can understand that you are at a higher band or a lower band, and the next question which will come will be to reinstate our understanding. So it's just 1 hour test, and obviously you save money and time, but not going to a test center or sometimes to another city. It's one of the universally accepted tests in more than 4,000 programs and universities. There are more than 1,100 US programs which right now accept Duolingo English test. In Canada, US, Ireland, Australia, there are a lot of programs which accept us. And I would even go ahead and say that even if you are applying for a university and Duolingo English test is not accepted, I would encourage you to use it as a platform to understand what is your proficiency, considering it is less than 4,000 rupees. So it's a test which is structured, which gives you a complete understanding of your profile, and you do not need to pay about 14,000 rupees to go and take a test which will give you the first understanding of your profile. So while it is accepted at so many more universities across the globe, there are many more use cases that we see students taking. So obviously, number one, no test centers accessible online, with only $49, which almost convert to about 4,000 rupees in India. And you can share it with as many universities as you want over the next 2 years. So even if you've taken the test today and you realize that I want to take the test maybe sometime later, or you have a fantastic score, you can keep it for 2 years and apply to the university whenever you want to. Since you take the test in just 1 hour, the great part is that you receive the result also in 48 hours, and you can immediately start sharing online with rest of the universities you aspire to go to. Test at your best is something that we completely believe in, and that is why we have an official readiness guide, which essentially gives you more tips about each question type. It helps you understand what is the score and on what rational do we do the scores, and you get a lot of sample questions there. We have an online free practice test. So as soon as you make your account, you're able to access test, which gives you, again, free of cost, an overall band of where does your score sit. And you can decide to take as many number of practice tests before you decide to say bye and take a score. Now, considering it's a home-based test or anywhere-based test, there are certain things which are extremely important, because I think we all believe that with flexibility comes a lot of responsibility. So some of the things that you need when you are taking the test is that you have a passport, because that's important for you to, that's one of the only element or a document we accept to identify your validity. You need to be in a quiet, well-lit room so that your face is clearly visible. Have a proper light coming in on your face, so then and clearly people can see you, not outsiders, but somebody on screen. And you should have 60 minutes of time without being disturbed, and a proper internet connection. And obviously a computer which has a browser, which is one of the supported browsers. It can download the application where we run the program, a front-facing camera, a clear microphone, and speakers. Now, some of the things that you are not allowed is no headphone or earphones, because I think a lot of us know that people try it, and students try to be mischievous and try to take external help. And even if you're not doing so, we do not want any reason for you to get disqualified because of this. Next is that you should try and, for example, now if you'll see, I'm talking to you, I'm looking at the screen. If I was looking at some content or prompts from somewhere else, I will end up looking outside of the screen. So it's important that you keep your attention on the screen. There should not be any plugins, or there should not be any programs like, say, Grammarly, etc., which should be running on your system. And nobody else should be sitting next to you. It is not a peer discussion test, so you have to be taking it alone. No devices, no material, etc., from outside should be attached. How do you take the test? Simply, we spoke about it: a computer with internet access, camera and a microphone, a valid passport, and 1 hour. You go to the link, which is, you go to English, Duolingo English test, just you put it on Google. This is the first link which it comes. You sign up. once you sign up, there is an option for you to take the test. So sign up is obviously free. Practice test is free. Take as many times as you want. If you don't want to take it, it's not compulsory as well. And once you think you're ready, you purchase the test, which costs less than 4,000 rupees. Now, you do not have to take the test the same day. You get validity for 21 days for taking the test. So you have the option to purchase, and you realize, okay, today is not the day, my electricity is gone, or some internet connection is there, you still have time. And within 2 days, you take the test in 60 minutes, and within 2 days, you get your result, and you can start sharing the result with as many universities as you want. So basically, in a snapshot, you can book the test in 5 minutes, take the test in 1 hour, and you get the results in 2 days, and share with as many universities, see that tracking on the dashboard that we have. And this costs just $50 or less than $50, which is less than 4,000 rupees. Here's a quick video.
Introducing
Is my volume, the video volume is working? Okay.
the English test designed for you. Convenient, fast, affordable, and trusted by top universities around the world. English testing no longer means paying hundreds of dollars, making appointments, traveling to the test center, and a long, stressful test experience. Now you can certify your English online, anytime, anywhere in the world for only $49. All you need is a computer, your ID, and 1 hour alone in a quiet room. You can take the test whenever you're ready, but be sure to follow all of the rules. The difficulty of the test adapts to each test taker, and it uses unique question types and artificial intelligence to accurately measure your English level in a fraction of the time. Each test is secured by remote proctors, AI, and computer vision technologies. You'll receive your results in 2 days, and you can instantly send them to an unlimited number of schools. Experience a better way to certify your English with the Duolingo English test. Introducing the
And I think last but not the least, I mean, we have a lot of students who've gone to some of the best universities across the globe. Almost every Ivy League university accepts us. So, make use of this opportunity, prepare for your best, see where your score is right now, make use of the free practice test, which is available. And I wish you all a very good luck to be part of the international education community.
Superb, Neha. It was quite a crisp and to the point presentation. I'm sure students have got the idea of why to take Duolingo English test and how English proficiency is important for their college applications. Now we are open to questions. So please send us the questions and we will have Neha answer for you.
Okay, I have some questions on my chat already.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
So somebody's mentioned, is the test same as TOEFL or a replacement thereof? So it is similar to TOEFL. It is similar to why you will take a TOEFL or an IELTS. There are various use cases. You will decide that I don't want to take any other test. I want to take Duolingo English test only because it is accepted by my university. By all means, go for it. You also realize that my university doesn't accept Duolingo English test. It accepts, say, IELTS. I would suggest take the first test for Duolingo, see what your proficiency is, because you will be in a real-time environment and a much lesser cost, about 1/4. And then once you think you're ready, go for another test. If you want to go, or your university doesn't accept Duolingo English test. Make use of the free practice test. I think it gives you a good understanding of what do you understand, not understand. You can practice from there. Okay, somebody tells me that they are learning German and French on Duolingo English language, the language app, fantastic. Now, can I pay the test fees with a debit card because my parents don't have a credit card? Yes, all cards are accepted. We are also working towards various other payment modes, but right now, yes, you can pay via credit and debit card. Is this a multiple choice question test? It's a combination of question types. I would encourage that you go again to Duolingo English website. So it is Duolingo English test. You just put it on Google and you will get it. If you would like, I'll drop the link also here. So once you go there, you make your account, and 1 second. so you make your account and you'll be able to see all the question types. Like I said, there is something called a readiness guide that we have, which you can access on our website again. And it's a combination of multiple choice, where some sections have multiple choice, but since we are testing the proficiency as well, you will have questions which are where you have to speak, you will have questions where you will hear, you will have questions where you have to write long passages as well. But this is all expected to be over within an hour. Do the students from IB board need to prove English proficiency? Now, a lot of schools in some part of the world, like in UK, have something like a medium of instruction waiver. So if you have English medium studies, which you've done in last 4 years, they have a waiver. Generally, it is good to give a test, and I would encourage, if your university is accepting Duolingo English test, it's not an expensive test, so give it so that your file is complete and you don't have any other concerns whether your test will be accepted, because you don't want to miss an admit just because of an English language test. Can I submit my English proficiency test to a university to get extra credit even if university doesn't require it? I think this is what I was saying, that give the test and submit it so that, I think my understanding is when we give our application file, the more elements which are there, they can make a better profile of you. So yes, if you can do it and make use of Duolingo English test here, because you don't have to spend as much and you have a profile ready which you can share with them. Do we have to have a setup with single camera or more than one? No, you need to have just a single camera front facing on your laptop or your computer, which is required. Okay, can I submit my English proficiency test to a university to get extra? We just did that. How many months preparation, if there is any, to take the test? Ideally, you should not need months of preparation for Duolingo English test. You should try and take the practice test. Keep a horizon of about 1 to 2 weeks, so that if there's something that you want to work on, I don't think you should be needing more than a month to prepare for your English proficiency test, because it tests who you are and then maybe you can work on it eventually. And thank you very much for somebody who tells that I study French on Duolingo. Any other questions, please?
Please feel free to ask your questions. We have Neha here with us, and she will definitely answer any queries you have related to English proficiency, DET. Please go ahead. I guess we don't have any more questions. So before we close this session, Neha, any last words that you want to share with the students?
I think practice makes the man perfect. And that's what I've heard from all students who take English language proficiency test. Everybody loves Duolingo's English practice test, but whatever test you're giving, practice as much as you can. Have a fair bit of understanding on which band do you lie, so that there are no surprises after you've given the test. And all the best.
Thank you so much, Neha, for coming and presenting with us. And we look forward to having more sessions with you.
Thank you so much, Kajol, and all the best, everybody. Thank you so much. Take care.
Before we move on to our fourth session, let's take like a minute's break, and then we can start with our last session for the day.
I will also share a little bit about the Next Genius Scholarship Program meanwhile. So to all the grade 12 students out here, first of all, please share in the chat how your experience has been, what all did you learn, and if there is something interesting that you wanted to share with us. But since we have a few minutes before we want to start the next session, let me just very quickly tell you all about Next Genius Scholarship Program. So the Next Genius Scholarship Program is India's largest undergraduate scholarship program. And through this scholarship program, through Next Genius, you have an opportunity of winning life-changing scholarships. You have an opportunity of winning full tuition scholarships, to some of the best universities of the world. Yeah. And I'll once again share with you our website, which is next-genius.com, so that you can learn about us and also apply for scholarships. So this is our website, and it's a very simple process. You need to just go online on our website and click this apply now button. Once you click that, it takes you to a registration form. You fill that simple form, and then our team connects with you for the next steps. But really, what we are looking for in our scholars is, first of all, it's for grade 12 students. This is for students who are citizens of Bangladesh, India, or Nepal, or anyone who's studying at one of these countries. The scholarship program offers scholarships only for tuition fees. So that means the living expenses is something which is the responsibility of the family itself. There is an online test that you need to take, a very simple grade 10th level maths and English test. We call it the online critical thinking test. So that is something, again, which is going to be important for you. And finally, career vision and college fit. So there is a list of universities available on our website, and more universities will be added to this. But we want you to see which college from this list is best for you. We'll provide you a lot of information. We would like you to shortlist the college for yourself and sort of tell us that I would like to go to this college. And then we support you with all the application process and the scholarships eventually. That's a little bit about Next Genius. Recently, a few of Next Genius scholars graduated, and we have posted their pictures on Instagram. So you can see that over here. I think it's a great opportunity for all the grade 12 or gap year students out there, and I would encourage you to learn more. Thank you so much, everyone. Kajol, the speakers are here, so maybe if you want, we can start early and then, Hi,
Yes.
Katherine. Hi, Kavitta. Good to see you.
Hi, Devesh. Hi, Kajol. Nice to see you guys too, and thank you for having us today.
Thank you for joining, and Kajol will take it forward from here.
Yes. So now we are heading into the last session of our profile building essentials, and we will be hearing two experts from Xtraview, Ms. Katherine and Ms. Kavitta, talk about how to present best version of yourself, in which they will be talking about interview skills as well as how to best build and showcase your profile while applying to colleges. Before I pass it over to them, a quick introduction. Ms. Katherine is the CEO and founder of Advanta Consulting, where she works with the international high school students across India, Singapore, Indonesia, and UK to help them navigate the US undergraduate admission process and gain admission to the best fit colleges. And Ms. Kavitta is the founder and CEO of JBC INC, Just Because It's Children, where she brings it in Broadway theatricals from overseas for children and family audiences all across India. An entrepreneur at heart, she is also an angel investor. She is a specialist of marketing management from the Times School of Marketing. Her corporate career includes heading communications for the British Council in India and being a part of brand management team at Deos Motors. Over to you, Katherine and Kavitta. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Kajol, for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, is my screen visible? Great. Thank you. All right, so so far in today's profile building fair, you guys have heard about really great opportunities for how you can build your profile in high school, ranging from research opportunities to different internships, and then ways that you can help to really strengthen and distinguish your application through profile building. But now what we'd like to discuss with you is how you translate that into the application itself. So how do you actually convey all of this profile building that you've done in an effective way in your application? And so a large part of that is the interviews, and the interviews that you will give as a part of the not only the profile building, but later the admissions process. And specifically, we're going to talk about how the right preparation for these interviews can help you speak and showcase what you've done in high school so that ultimately you succeed in admissions. Before we go into the interviews, though, I'm going to give a little bit of background information to talk about the role of profile building in a holistic admissions review. So as a part of today's conversation, you may have already heard about how, holistic admissions review means that it's not just your academics, it's not just your test scores, but it's also, those factors, as well as your extracurricular activities, your essays, everything else that you kind of bring to the table and that you're presenting to universities. So for US admissions in particular, your profile is very, very important because US universities across the board employ this holistic admissions review, meaning that they're looking at all of these factors, and they're looking at these factors across 4 years. So from the time that you're in class 9 all the way up through class 12. So they want to know not just, how have you done academically and in terms of your tests, but also what else have you been involved in? What are you passionate about? And how have you demonstrated that through your extracurriculars and through your profile? For other countries like Canada, profile building plays an important role in merit scholarship consideration. So for admission, they may be looking largely at academics, but the students that they're considering for merit scholarships, or the strong contenders for merit scholarships, typically have strong leadership and community service work as well. And so it's helpful to know that even there, profile building has an important role. For UK and European universities, there's also an element of profile building, but it tends to be more academic in nature. So again, it's not just your grades. Your grades are important, but also for the course that you're planning to apply for, how have you demonstrated and explored that interest in high school? So this kind of academic profile building often comes in the form of things like research opportunities, relevant internships, additional coursework that you've taken on. So ways that you can still show how you've built your profile, but more tailored towards your academic interests. And even some universities in India, especially the liberal arts institutions, also employ a holistic review. So similar to the US, they want to see not just your academics, but also what else have you been involved in during high school. So with that context now, what role does interviewing play in profile building and in these high school extracurriculars? So when you're still in high school, there are certain things like leadership roles, for example, where most likely you will have to interview. You'll either have to interview with, the student who holds that current position, maybe the teachers, there may be a panel interview that you have to do. And then after that, you often have to give a speech, or you have to, there's a whole nomination and then selection process. So in this, not only interviewing, but also communication skills generally are crucial. Similarly, for other profile building activities like internships, competitive summer programs, and research programs, they may have an interview as a part of the selection process. And what are they looking for in this interview? They want to see your communication skills, can you communicate your ideas in a concise and clear way? But also they really want to get a better understanding of you as a person, and not just your essays, not just your academics, but what are you passionate about? How well can you convey that passion? Does that come through? And really just sort of a sense of you overall that only comes through an interview. So this is where interviews overall, especially interview preparation, becomes really, really essential, even in high school, as a part of the profile building process, because often those interviews are sort of the gateway to unlock these leadership roles or these various opportunities. And the question of how you succeed in these interviews, or how you do well, it's all about being able to demonstrate your fit for that role. So why you are the right fit for this leadership post, or why you're the right fit for a particular research program. And being able to articulate that comes with practice and preparation. And that's what you need to really perfect your interview. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and some strategies for that in a bit. Moving beyond, your high school experience and taking you to the point where you're actually about to start applying, what role do interviews play in the admissions process? They're a really important point of being able to share that profile information with universities. So again, beyond your essays, beyond just the application form that you'll fill out, the activities list, the resume, the interview is often that first point of contact where you are actually speaking directly with someone who represents the university and being able to share that information with them. So in the university admissions process, there are typically 3 kinds of interviews that you might encounter. So the first one is an admissions interview. And so this is an interview that's usually held with a representative from the admissions office. It might even be the admissions officer who's reading your application and making the final decision on whether or not you're admitted. So these ones carry the most weight in admissions because, again, the interviewer has a direct say in your final acceptance. And in this kind of interview, they may even have your application if you've already applied in front of them. So they may want to really delve into specific details of what's already covered there in your application and learn more about those and as well as about you in the interview. A second type of interview that you may encounter is the alumni interview. So these are typically conducted by alumni of the university who have volunteered to be a part of their interview program. They might be local or they may be remote. And so as a result, the interview may be online or in person. But generally speaking, these interviews are a little more informal, a little more casual than the admissions interview, but there's still a great opportunity for you to indicate your interest in the university and also to learn more about the university. You can ask the alumni about their experience. You can get a little more information on what the whole university experience is like. And so these are also a great way to learn more about the school and demonstrate your interest to universities as a part of the admissions process. And finally, the third type of interview is a video interview. And again, these can take a few different formats. So some may be self-recorded, meaning that, the interview says, the university says that you have an opportunity to record a short video and submit it. And so there, it sometimes has a prompt, sometimes it's really open-ended, but usually it's about 2 minutes where you set up your laptop, you set up your phone, whatever it is, and you're sort of speaking directly to the person who's watching it. And then you share that pre-recorded interview as a part of your application. Another type of interview is an AI-based interview. So here, rather than actually speaking to another person, instead, there will be an AI bot that will generate questions. So they're random on-the-spot questions. You won't know the prompts beforehand, but then you will give your response again in a recorded video format. There's usually a fixed amount of time, and then it moves on to the next question. So quite similar to an in-person interview, just that it's being conducted, online and with an AI bot as opposed to directly with the person. And then the final kind of interview is a live video interview. So these are typically conducted by a third party, not by the university themselves. But for this, you would register for the interview, you log in at the set time, and then you're there with another person. The video is being recorded. You have a conversation with them in the form of that throughout the interview. And then that is something that you can also share with universities as a part of your application. So all of these are different types of interviews that you may encounter. And while the formats may differ, all of these are opportunities for you to really distinguish your application and to stand out from other applicants, other people who will be applying in that cycle. So now coming to the ways that you can best prepare yourself for the interview, we'd like to introduce the 3 Ps. And with that, I'm also going to hand it over to my partner, Kavitta.
Thank you, Katherine. I'm sure by now everyone listening has completely bedazzled by the amount of interviews that there can be, and also how important interviews are, especially in today's times in universities, learning programs, internship opportunities, actually deciding whether you're a great fit for them or not. So that means whether you convert that opportunity or not. So it requires students today to think about the whole process of interviewing and thereby learning how to present the best version of themselves. Because remember, you get only that one shot to do it. So we're going to teach you something today in a nutshell, which if you keep in your mind and use as a standpoint for preparation, we assure you it will go a long way in you cracking that interview. So what are these 3 Ps? The first one is what we call prepare. Now, when we talk about preparing for an interview, most of you would think this is so obvious, but let's think a little bit beyond the obvious. It's very important, students have very busy lives and schedules. So it's very important to know and note down the correct date and time of the interview to begin with. Second, the platform of how you're conducting this interview. If it's in person, keep enough time for travel. If it's an online interview, make sure your computer, your phone, your laptop is all charged. The background is clear. There is no in and out of the room. You are dressed appropriately. If you're doing an in-person interview, remember, from head to toe, you must look the part you want to project. If you're doing a video interview, then remember, you only have a little bit of yourself to be able to showcase who you really are. So it's important not only to dress sharp, but also use body language, the way you use your hands to illustrate a point, the way you look into the camera, the way you're groomed. All of that is very important and all skews in to preparing for the interview. One important detail to remember, do not be distracted as you do the interviews, whether it's an in-person interview or an online interview. So that's the first P that we talk about. What's the second P that we talk about? The second P is practice. We've often heard the line, practice makes perfect, and we tend to ignore it always. But believe you me, the more you practice is how perfect you get. So once your information is ready for your interview, once your factual information, details about what profile you have built, what's the story you want to tell about yourself is ready in your own head, whether you've written it down or it's in your mind, remember to practice. Say it aloud, say it many number of times, say it in front of a mirror. Nowadays, it's very easy to record yourself on simple softwares that are available on our phones. It's very easy to record ourselves as we speak on our machines and evaluate that which style of speaking suits you best. What's the best way that you're communicating what you want to in the most efficient manner? Because remember, there is a plethora of information that's available and you have to actually cut through the clutter to be able to make your mark. Also practice with buddies. Ask your parents, ask your teachers, ask your mentors, ask your friends to pitch in. The more you practice, the more story that you tell will be credible and all details, because most often we come away from conversations feeling, oh, I forgot to mention that. Oh, I should have spent more time on that bit of information. But if you've practiced, then you know how much time you need to spend on what area of information, how important it is in the larger framework, and how you must communicate that efficiently. And the last most important P is something that we call pre-research. You know, these days, in times of instant information and everything at our fingertips, sometimes we lose the importance of deep diving. And that actually comes through in conversations and interviews that we have. So when we do pre-research, it's at various levels that we need to think about. One, the university that you're applying to. When you research information about that university, then you are able to tailor answers on how you are a good fit and how interests of the university and interests of you as a student seem to be completely in compliance with one another. The second research you must do is about the course that you're applying for. That shows your interest and intent in diving deep, understanding what is needed from you as a candidate or a student to deliver, and then going on to show that you have not just researched the university that you're applying to, you've researched the course that you're applying to. So for example, if you want to do something in biodiversity, and they have a $3 million grant, US dollar grant that the university has to promote biodiversity in that year. And you bring that up in your conversations and say, I want to undertake a project at a marine park where I want to study biodiversity. And I know the college has a grant and I want to apply for some bit of that grant. Can you see how impressed the person who's hearing you is going to sound about your intent to become a part of that institution? So that also already places you above the thousands of applications that a university receives. Now, when we have done research about the institution, about the course, if we happen to know who our interviewer is, it's very important to spend some time on pre-researching that. So if you know who your interviewer is, if they've written something, read it. If they've done a TED talk, hear it. So that in your conversation, you are able to bring up interests that are common, and there is an alliance between you two which goes beyond being an interviewer and an interviewee. These are things about the actual interview process. But now let's look at it from another angle. If you're a high school student and you're applying for a leadership role where you have to work as a team, so you can talk about the fact that you are able to influence people, you're able to talk about the fact that you are able to deliver to deadlines as a team, and you're a people's person. On the other hand, if you're applying for the role of a head boy or a head girl, and you need to showcase that you can take initiative, you are not scared to not take on popular opinion, and you are able to motivate others to work together cohesively, then that puts you ahead of the crowd. So there is so much of information available. Only be conscious of the fact that you need to spend time into doing pre-research, and these 3 Ps will take you a long way in cracking those interviews. So like I said, communication is key. Spend some time on communicating the best version of yourself. And I'm going to hand it back to Katherine.
Thanks, Kavitta. So we also are here to support and work with students. So we had Xtraview, and then also through an early years program called Head Start Mentorship, work with students in terms of how they can improve both their spoken and written communication skills, and identify profile building opportunities so that they really can showcase the best version of themselves in their application. We have an upcoming interview workshop on Saturday, 13th August from 4 to 6 p.m. So for those who are interested in taking part in the workshop, you can get in touch with us at the phone number below or the email address there too. We would love to have you there and be able to work with you on honing your interview skills. And this is great both for class 12 students who will be applying this year in terms of their actual applications and the interviews they may give there, but even younger students who anticipate that as a part of their profile building, they will have interviews, they will have interview processes for the various other activities that they plan to get involved with in high school. So we'd love to see you all there.
Thank you so much, Katherine and Kavitta, for being so crisp and to the point again with the presentation. Loved hearing you, and I'm sure students also love getting all the information from you. So we can now head over to the Q&A part. So students, if you have any questions, please send us to, you can type it down in chat box and we can take it over.
And I'm also just putting the email address in the chat as well.
Any questions, please feel free to send it in the chat box and we will be taking it up.
Otherwise, I think Kavitta, we've answered everything that there is to know about interviews.
Either we were so good that they have no questions, or we were so bad that they just don't want to talk to us.
No, I'm sure you was good because they are clear with things, and as Katherine has already put down the contact details, they might reach out to you or for the workshop or any other thing they have. We have one question. At what age should we start preparing for interviews? The student is in 9th standard right now.
I think it depends. So admissions interviews closer to the time that you're applying, university specific ones, that would usually be towards the end of 11th and beginning of 12th. But interviews generally, those will keep coming up throughout high school. So honestly, even class 9 is a good time to start preparing for things like interviews for leadership roles, interviews for either fellowships, workshops, different programs that you might want to be a part of that have a competitive admissions process. And I think there too, interviewing is a skill that compounds over time. So the earlier you start and the more you practice and refine those skills, the stronger an interviewer and speaker you become over the years. Yeah, and I've gotten 2 questions in direct message. So one of them is, could you please elaborate on the Head Start mentorship program? Yes, we'd be happy to. So Head Start is an early years mentorship program. It's meant for students in classes 8 through 10, where we're working on specific areas of skill building as a part of profile building. And so we give students exposure to profile building opportunities, but then also work closely with them as mentors on things like communication skills, writing skills, helping students develop an idea and then work towards a passion project, editing, citations, early research skills, things like that. Kavitta, am I missing anything in terms of Head Start mentorship?
No. So some of the other specific things that we would be doing in that program is also creating personal websites, is also helping students learn how to do LinkedIn accounts, is also writing skills that that are necessary for today's world, and of course a holistic way of exploring various opportunities that are available. So what we found is that when students reach class 11 and 12, they don't have the bandwidth or the time to explore different areas of interest. However, if you start looking at class 8 students or class 9 students, then you have time to explore various things, see which way you're really happy to go, and then build upon that in 11th and 12th.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I have another one from Nidhi saying, does the difficulty of questions depend on an application? So not inherently. It's not as if, I think it depends more on what the university is trying to glean from the interview. So generally, no. I mean, I think that most US universities, whether it is one with a 4% acceptance rate, whether it's one with a 40% acceptance rate, your interviews will be very similar in both cases. It's not like they're asking different types of questions. They're really just trying to get a sense of you and, again, what you bring beyond your academics. Other universities and other systems might have more difficult ones. So there are some universities in the UK, Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial on some occasions that do have an interview that is more subject specific. So they're not asking, what did you do during your summer break and recommend a good book to me. Instead, they are trying to assess your ability to reason through new information. So those are more challenging interviews because the objective of those interviews is really more evaluative to move to the next stage of the admissions process, as opposed to just a general, getting to know you interview. So I think that there depends less on the difficulty of the university and more what they're trying to get from that interview and its role in the admissions process. What else?
So, Katherine, I'm just going to add to that. The fact that the questions are similar makes it even more important that your answers need to be different to stand out. Makes it even more important for you to be training well for these interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have another question, and Kavitta, I'm going to direct it to you. So it is there any best way to start preparing by oneself for the interviews?
Yeah, sure. So you would know what some of the standard questions are. Tell me about yourself, what you did this summer. If you worked on a passion project, what was it? What made you work in there? What was the result that you got? Questions about your future. Where do you see yourself 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Why this university? These are all standard, obvious questions that get asked one way or another. So start developing answers to those questions. As you start developing answers, practice those answers. Keep adding nuggets of information as you seem fit. And once that is there, keep saying those answers aloud to see how they sound. So all of it. So the point of these workshops is to know how to do it. Eventually, it has to be done by you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is very much a self-driven, self-motivated exercise. And to that, I would say, I guess preparing by yourself, here's a really important tip that I think sometimes gets overlooked. Make sure that even if you are preparing by yourself, you're still doing you're practicing your responses out loud, because I think that, and this was something that Kavitta mentioned, to record yourself as a part of your preparation so that you can, listen to that again. But there's a difference between, saying, I have the answer, I know it, it's in my head, and actually that, translating that, it sort of gets garbled in on the highway from your brain out, out into the air. And so making sure that you do say it out loud, because it's when you say it out loud as a part of practice that you realize this is crystal clear, I've got this, versus, oh no, that isn't as clear as I had thought it would be.
Great.
Let me see. Yeah, no other questions about interviewing. For those that are messaging with for contact information, I'm just sharing that in chat. Anything else that's come in?
If any other questions, please send in so that we can have them answered by Kavitta and Katherine. If you are direct messaging them, maybe if they can just check out, or
Yeah, I'm just responding to a few people. On what platform would the so the workshops that we do would be over Zoom, so that people can log in and connect regardless of where they are. Any other questions?
we can, I guess, wait for one more minute if there are any more questions, otherwise we can close it. I guess we do not have any questions. So before we close, anything else you would like to add, both Katherine and Kavitta, before we close the session? Any tip?
I'd just like to say that in the past, looking at the level of candidates that are there in the Next Genius Scholarship Program, it's been truly impressive at what all students are doing today, are achieving today. And I would sincerely urge them to spend some time on learning how to communicate well, because it's great to have done great things, but unless you are able to tell the world what you've done, it doesn't get accounted for. And each one of you is achieving great things, is capable of achieving even more. So do spend some time on thinking about communication and how you present yourself to the outside world.
Great.
Yeah.
That is one great tip that can, students follow.
Yeah, and to that I would also say, I mean, the fact that you guys are already here today, a part of this fair in the audience, is commendable. It shows that you're already on the right track and that you're seriously thinking about the admissions process, that you're already engaged. And just to reiterate what Kavitta said, I think being able to communicate that, to convey that, is so important. And so we would love to be able to work with you and support you in that part of the journey as well.
Yes. So before we close, I am again pasting our YouTube channel link below in the chat, and the recording of these sessions will be available there. You can have access even after the session to, go back to learn whatever you have learned today. And yes, thank you so much, Katherine and Kavitta, for joining us today and giving such a beautiful presentation and talking with these students.
Thank you again for having us.